What's up, buddy?
Hey.
Soccer Dad Pod. Coming in with a little Whiskey Town in honor of your gift today. Have I ever told you on air that you are my favorite child?
Well, I'm a lot of people's favorite child, and when I come bearing Irish whiskey, things tend to go well for me.
Well, you guys just had a little luck of the Irish the other day with the beverage truck, didn't you, man?
Yeah, we had a good day. We did a lot of learning. It's our first time being there, and I think we're going to break into some more St. Louis events. We'll know what we're doing more so next year, and it will be extremely more profitable. But it was our first event of the year. We had a good start.
How many shots of green Jell-O did you sling out that window?
I think she sold 250 Jell-O shots, and we probably could have done double. And that's all margin. Like 250 shots, if you're charging,
nobody.
Who cares what you're charging? But I think we have about $30 in cost in that.
So you're saying the economics were good?
Yeah. Yes. Very, very, very good.
Did you feel a little immature handing out Jell-O shots?
Well, I wasn't there. I was up in the Milwaukee area getting blown over with the windstorm and watching some high school academy soccer in between Chicago, northwestern suburbs of Chicago, and that Milwaukee area. And I got to tell you, I like Milwaukee. We went and caught a Bucks game.
Milwaukee's cool, man.
Milwaukee's is a good area. I mean, if I couldn't stand the cold, I could do Milwaukee.
Well, okay, Milwaukee is cool for about 3 months out of the year. And I'll give them credit. I mean, we clearly love our beloved soccer park and the facility and the Budweiser beer garden and Field One and the whole 9 yards. Yeah, Bavaria's there. I mean, they got their own legit beer garden with real schnitzel.
Yeah,
and wursts.
Yeah, and the big trophy case to show the super longevity of the youth game and the semi-pro game up there. I don't think the Gansners are involved in it anymore, but they were longtime names within that program, and there's a lot of history up there.
Love it. Soccer Dad Pod, we continue to grow. Thanks to all of you. Quick PSA. Just click on that review button. Put in a few words. I mean, it can even be as little as kills time. I don't care what it is. Just drop a 4 or 5 star on there. We would appreciate it. Those reviews apparently are what really kind of drive the rest of the movement. So that's our only ask. We never ask for money from anybody, do we? We don't, actually.
Not on mic.
No, not exactly. in private, often. Yeah. So it'd be the least you could do for us. We've had a lot of episodes going out the door. This is good, busy season for us. Kind of running the gamut of, from college to facilities to OGs to the next gen. So it's been a fun run. Points of the day, session taco. What you got, man? I know you came in ready.
Yeah, mine's not going to be soccer related today. It's going to be much more down the road where everybody's like, "Really? Come on, man."
Is it weather?
It is. It's it's at the time of this recording. It's Thursday, March 20th, and I think people know that day, or at least this year, this is considered the first day of spring, and March 20th, the season spring here in St. Louis, where most of our listeners are from. What is spring? I mean, do we spend the whole season waiting for spring, and it's either 20 and snowing or 30 and windy, or it's 90? Do we ever get spring?
No. And here's the other thing, in this whole, quote, climate change environment. You know what I hate about it most right now? Every time I wash my car in the last 30 days, the dirt that's in the air from the wind, it's just completely destroying all the cars, all our windows. That hasn't happened before.
Buy a white car.
What?
Buy a white car. You have a black car.
I'm not going to buy a white car. Regardless, it's all messed up.
So that's my session point, spring. Leave a remark. What is your thoughts? Because everybody's all fired up. I'm fired up. I'm ready to get the pool open. I'm ready to go outside. I'm ready to sweat. I'm ready for a mosquito bite. And spring sucks in St. Louis.
It has lately. I'm with you, man. I agree. I wanted to bring up the I think it broke on Twitter yesterday. St. Louis's own Tim Ream was in a brief interview. They asked him about his illustrious career, et cetera, and he got kind of pointed and was simply he shut the interviewer down, not in a bad way, but basically like, I'm not done. My goal is World Cup, period, and kind of ended the interview at that point. And I wanted to bring it up to you because, look, we're all homers for obvious reasons, right? But watching him play, because I've been watching more MLS games this year, just flipping through, and I don't know, I'm liking the quality a little bit more than previous years. And I've watched the Charlotte team play. Dude's good. He still has it. Like, he's got so much poise and comfort on the ball. Obviously, the legs and the pace is reflecting that 36, 37, whatever it is. But I'm rooting for him. I think he makes the roster is where I'm going with this.
Well, and my 2 cents are, and it might be the homer take of the day since we're doing this from a driver pitching wedge from where he played his college days at. And I also happen to go to the same high school that he did. For me, Poch is in. It's a new regime. Our big hot button 2026 North American World Cup is coming. There has yet to be anybody else in the United States that is eligible to play for that team that plays anywhere in the globe that has taken that position away from him by stranglehold. So we might be kicking ourselves in the behind or have our tail between our legs per se come, spring of 26 because somebody has jumped up. But right now, he's on the field for us, for me, in the center back position.
I agree. I think it's his to lose. Anything can happen, injuries, et cetera. But, you just look at, again, taking the age and all the rest of the numbers and mathematics out of the equation, just the sniff test, watch him play. Dude can play. Mm-hmm. Simple as that. It is time. We're going to go ahead and roll our guests on here. They've been sitting in the wings. We're going to pull them onto stage here. We've got with us a couple of the directors, leaders of the PCDA, Pre-College Development Academy, located in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, just south of, is it south of Nashville? Yes, no?
I think these guys tell us the
they'll
geography of it. Yeah.
Denver and Charlotte and a couple other locations. Welcome to the show, Ryan Hodgson and Mathis Manel. How's it going?
Yeah, good. Thanks, fellas, for having us. Appreciate it.
Well, we as we stated before we jumped on the line, we kind of know our listeners. We know the demo, and in kind of researching your guys' program and what you do, who engages it,
knowing the landscape.
Yeah, I was like, this is a no-brainer. So PCDA, let's start just with the basics. For those that don't know, give us the quick mission statement, elevator pitch. What is the organization? What is the program? And what are you guys looking to accomplish?
Yeah, well, I appreciate it again, guys, for having us. I'm Ryan Hodgson. I'm the CEO and National Academy Director, the founder of PCDA. I think the name says it all with what we are and what we do, right? Pre-College Development Academy. We're essentially an insurance policy to capture late developers out of high school, right? The famous Jamie Vardy story, the Matt Turner from Fairfield, right? Played 1 year of college soccer, and now he's playing in the Premier League and is the number one for the national team, right? And there's thousands of players out there that have been overlooked because they're simply not ready. We've created a program that can take high school graduates, preserve their eligibility while still putting them in part-time and then full-time college education. So if an athlete maps it out correctly from an academic perspective, they could leave us with half of their bachelor's degree completed, but from an athletic perspective, still maintain 4 playing years of eligibility. So ultimately, yeah, go ahead.
Well, okay, so give a quick compare-contrast to JUCO, because a lot of people are starting to think in terms of, especially with the recent rulings on extending eligibility, What is the compare and contrast to a traditional junior college and what you're doing at PCDA?
And include finances, if you would.
Yes, please.
Yeah, for sure, 100%, right? So I think from a side-by-side compare and contrast with JUCO is there really isn't any kind of comparison. We're 10 months there, 8 weeks. A kid can still get their AA degree with us, but play 10 months. I think it's a good segue into clarifying, fellas, the waiver with junior college right now, because I get asked that question daily, and I get told from future recruits that I can go to a junior college and my eligibility doesn't count. Well, I think it's a good segue to try and clarify what that actually means. And essentially, it's just a waiver for the 2025-26 season, right? So if you have exhausted your NCAA eligibility and in Division I and started your college career in a non-NCAA sanctioned spot, such as junior college or NAIA, you're gifted 1 year of eligibility just for the fall of 25-26 or the 25-26 season. This does not mean any kid can now simply say, blanket statement, I'm going to go to a junior college and those 2 years don't count.
Well, and then I think you guys know, and to clarify for our listeners, and a little bit redundant here, but let's break it down to St. Louis or other metropolitan areas. You guys have been in the game for a long time. The St. Louis junior colleges have had a lot of success. So we're in year 2025. Most of these graduates, boys, fall sport, they're going to graduate in 26. If they say they want to go to a JUCO here in St. Louis within our JUCO system, they cannot play the fall of 26 and the fall of 27 and then enroll in a Division I university and have no eligibility stripped, is what you just said, correct? Currently, that eligibility will be taken away from them. If they go to a junior college, the 26-27 season, they will lose 2 years of eligibility. Now, that's just for today. I don't know what's going to happen. And who would? Yeah.
Exactly, right? So what I think is going to happen is it's going to be a blanket 5-year waiver, right? Kid graduates high school, they'll have 5 years to play junior college or play NCAA or NAIA. Because here's what's happening. This is just a Division I waiver. The Division II Board of Directors and Division III Board of Directors have not ruled on this yet. Now, they don't want to get sued because Division I are losing, Division II don't want to get sued, Division III don't want to get sued. So I think that waiver will likely pass. And it's going to be fought in the courts for years and years. But I strongly believe a 5-year clock, including a gap year, will likely be something that moves forward sometime later this year.
For the kids that need it, or for the competitive universities that are going to require it because they're not going to take anybody young, or I think that's a more of a generalized statement as far as you're just specifically talking about their clock. So if they graduate in 26, you're talking gap year 26 of the fall, and then their 5-year clock starts in your model, correct?
Correct. Well, not with us, no, right? So if use this fall as an example, of fall of 25, the kids that are graduating high school this spring in Division I or in NCAA soccer, they are gifted a 1-year gap year, is what they call it, right? Before their eligibility clock starts the following year. Ice hockey has 3-year grace period. Soccer has 1, right? So if a kid comes to us in the fall of 25 and maps it out correctly, they could have 28 college credits after fall, spring, summer. We've used their gap year, but they've got 28 college credits. They still have 5 years of eligibility remaining.
So let me ask you just a background question on PCDA specifically. You played in college. You've been around the game your whole life. Why PCDA? Where was the gap in the market, or the idea, or the light bulb that went off, right? That drove you to kind of create a structure that is targeting that gap while integrating academics and extending the play time beyond just a fall season?
Yeah, I think people tell me all the time that I think we're too far ahead of the game. We introduced PCDA a little bit too early. And again, we're the Mavericks in this space, where I think we were the first true we don't like the term gap year, right? Because I think a gap year seems as though it's unproductive. Go find a year, travel, find yourself. It's important to understand from parents, you're still in college, right? I think the light bulb, the aha moment was in 2000. I built a program for another organization taking American kids to the UK. So I needed 3 things to make that program sustainable. Destination, I went back home to my home country, right? I needed an education. I formed educational partnerships with universities in the UK. It was a 3-year bachelor's degree versus a 4-year bachelor's degree if you qualified. And then I needed a soccer element. We formed a partnership with a really elite league in there. The problem was the universities and football clubs didn't talk to each other. So there was consistent scheduling issues. And to this day, those issues still remain. So I brought the program, that concept, back to the United States. It took about a year of research and development, reaching out to college coaches. That aha moment was, wow, how many internationals are taking up these roster spots in college soccer? American kids. And the irony is, I sit here talking to you with an accent, trying to build a program to help American kids, right? I've been in the US over half my life. So the aha moment was, these rosters are full of international players, dwindling roster spots for American kids, talking to a lot of Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, and I've worked in the collegiate game as well. Some of my best friends are head coaches across all levels. And the overwhelming response, guys, was we need a program in America because we no longer, going into COVID, they weren't allowed to travel. They had no idea when those travel bans were going to be lifted. Budgets were slashed, no budget to go overseas and look at 1 or 2 players anymore. So the response was, yes, if this program existed in America, we would fully support it. It would develop older, more mature American players that can compete at 20 years old with an extended amount of eligibility. Just on that eligibility point as well, when I'm talking to high level ACC coaches that had no idea that this rule existed that we found.
So let me ask you, just simple numbers. How long has PCDA been in existence?
So we're going into our 5th year this fall of Academy. So we've had 4 full years of an Academy.
Okay, so you guys, you saw the gap in the market. You got the connections. You roll it out. You're kind of dipping and dodging around COVID. Let's talk about the early years. Who did you pitch to? Who were you talking to? Was it easy to find the type of players that you were hoping to get? Was it a bunch of inbound phone calls that you're answering and saying, "Oh my God, yes, this is a great idea. Look, the light keeps turning on." Or were you strategic in going to market and looking for particular either style of players or types of kids? What did that process look like in the early days on that first batch of player students?
Yeah, the early days was certainly interesting, right? Trying to get kids that have not been committed, not getting any looks during COVID to move away from home. Because year 1, we were in Augusta, Georgia. So we had kids from California, Oregon, New York, right? All over the US, moved to Augusta, Georgia with something that had never been done before. And it was just a jump into the deep end. We made a lot of mistakes from players we attracted. And we're no different now than we were then, right? Because we want to be able to, when I go to a college showcase and I'm sitting next to some D1, D2, D3 coaches scouting players, those coaches, guys, are saying, no, maybe yes, right? We're saying, well, my crystal ball is broken. But I do know for a fact that if you're playing MLS Next, ECNL National, you're at a high level, right? We'll take those players sight unseen under some certain assumptions that if they want to go pro, we won't take that kid. If they just want to go D1, we won't take that player. But if they're open to any and all levels, then we can take them into the academy because we know there's a place for them in 1 year, 18 months, or 2 years. So when we look at these players, it's not as if we're selective in, well, you're not good enough, so we're not going to recruit you. We want to give you an opportunity because maybe we do send you to an NAIA program, or maybe we do send you to a high-level, mid-level D3, but we've extended your soccer career, giving you a fantastic experience with college credits as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned early in some of the Q&A here that it's been mentioned to you that you guys are a little bit ahead of your game here, or ahead of the times. There's a lot to unpack there, because I think we know the college landscape and the game getting older with more internationals that are coming in, the roster sizes, the noise about the not losing eligibility if you do this, the 1 year, or what you clarified early. My question is the clubs that are out there. You're in Murfreesboro, so there's, of course, clubs around the Nashville area, or we're in St. Louis. Have you talked to other clubs, and maybe the answer is no, about specifically, because if there is truly a need for a gap year, how long, in your estimation, will all these clubs start having gap year programs?
Yeah, it's so, again, we're a little bit ahead of the game. We've introduced a PCDA National Soccer League, that rather than us recruiting players to come to PCDA and leave homes, we're now strategically going to bring the PCDA concept to clubs around the country. We haven't strategically partnered with clubs in sort of in and around Murfreesboro or Denver or Charlotte, specifically because we want to remain Switzerland. If we strategically partner with Scott Gallagher, for example, then St. Louis Development Academy or Lou Fuse or whoever will be like, well, that's a Scott Gallagher program. Why would we send our players to play for there? So we want to remain Switzerland. When we introduce the National Soccer League, that's when we're going to be selective in certain markets to say we will only have, for example, Florida, 10 PCDA National Soccer League teams in Florida. That means we can collectively collaborate best with best. The kids can come, they can stay away, they can stay at home, they can maybe move into some housing if they're further than a typical commute could be. And that way you kind of bring in the best with best, because right now the best with best doesn't exist.
For our listeners, so like the age group we're talking specifically is like 17 to 19, would you say? Or is it kind of an open-ended thing as long as you graduate high school?
Yeah, so our sweet spot is high school grads to first-year college transfers. And I got to tell you, the college transfer market is a nightmare. It's a disaster, right? You've got 3,500 guys in there that statistics, 57% of careers end in the portal. But a lot of those kids that are in the portal have never been told they're not good enough in their life. They've always either been captains of their teams, they've played on a roster of 18, playing time has always been guaranteed. But how dare you tell me when I go to SLU, for example, how dare you tell me I'm not good enough to play for your program? I've always played. I was a captain. Well, sorry, son, you're 18 years old. You can't compete with a 24-year-old Israeli guy that served in the Israeli military that is an absolute monster. You've got to bide your time. And maybe, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's, excuse me, it is the proverbial issue. I mean, it is what all parents are worried about. It's what everybody's talking about. It's what everybody on Twitter wants to debate about. It's just the soup of the day, so to speak. Go ahead. You got a question?
Yeah, I just a light bulb went off, and you guys know him. I know the next gentleman that will speak here because the question is directed towards him. Mr. Andy Fleming is providing a service to the same clientele, if you will. And he had a client, and he mentioned on our show that he called him at 3:00 one day, and he woke him up out of bed on his proverbial gap year. What are you doing? I'm trying to get you into a school. So what I think is interesting about your facility and your program specifically is, and we'll gear it to the academic side, because if I was listening in the car, I would want to ask this. What I like about an 18-year-old entitled college kid, or maybe we'll leave the entitled out of it, is they're going to your program and they have a schedule. They're not going to sleep in and go work out on their own and then, hey, go to the community college and there's no guidance. Hey, how are your grades once a semester? What are you doing to get to the next level? So for the other gentleman, introduce yourself on the podcast and maybe a little history, but the academic piece I think is really interesting for families and kids, because if we're going to do this and spend the money that it takes, What are we getting out of it? Can you go down that road a little bit?
Sure. I mean, one, thanks for having me. My name is Dr. Mathis Mental. I have played soccer at the Air Force Academy a million years ago. I am a college soccer parent. My son plays Division I, and I've been doing this a long time. And when I got out of coaching at 2019, I left University of North Carolina, Asheville, and was finishing up my doctorate. Obviously you want to stay involved in the game. And Ryan and I had a conversation, and Ryan, in full disclosure, we know a lot of same people in common. And he put a question out and he said, how do I solve academics? And we jumped on the phone, and, through our conversation, it was like, okay, I can help you do this. So the reality is that, and I know Andy Fleming, he does a great job and he's a great resource for his clients. And there's a lot of people doing that. Just the reality, the sheer numbers of it alone, the amount of kids that are graduating high school with a desire to play college soccer. And the thing that sold me on the PCDA model is that, Ryan and the technical staff and the recruitment staff, when they're talking to these kids, they do not promise them a level that they're going to get to. And they also do not promise them a level of athletic scholarship they're going to get, because, Ryan mentioned it earlier, the crystal ball, all of our crystal balls are broken. So, but what we do offer is a pretty holistic and well-rounded approach towards being a student athlete. So, I mean, particularly academics, let's talk about this. You take your gap year, as long as you don't enroll full-time, you can take credit. So traditionally, and we have, 3 main educational partnerships with different schools around the country. And so if you take less than full-time, you can spend that year and literally end up, even if you don't do the summer, you're going to end up with 18 units. Well, if you look at what a college semester looks like, full load would be 15. It takes you 8 semesters times 15 to graduate from college. Well, you're going to leave PCDA, and hopefully it all works out. You spend a year developing, you've got 18 units, you're going out. You've now turned a 4-semester program, a 4-year program, 8 semesters into 3.5. Well, as we all know, college soccer, if I go, the spring semester of your senior year, if you went straight from high school, that's kind of a dead semester. You're just hanging out and doing all the things. Well, if I can turn this into 3.5, where you can graduate in December, you could still do the ceremony in May. But if and when, and golly, it'd be great if they have a chance to be a pro. Right now, all of our professional system starts in January. So that would be great if they could, at the end of their 4 years of playing college soccer, have a degree and have a chance to be a pro. Also, too, let's just talk about the sheer economics of it. If you go and you do academics with us, with our partner institutions, traditionally they're going to be less than what the cost would be at a 4-year school. So now I've taken this 8-semester financial piece before any financial aid, whether it be athletic, academic, or need-based. I've now turned this 8-semester proposition into a 7-semester. And you look at what the cost that would be. You take SLU, for example, that's a savings of about $36,000 when you're looking at $72,000 in and out the door before aid. That's pretty amazing. But then the other part is too, and you talked about a schedule, and all of our kids do online and asynchronous classes. And I don't know that there is a silver lining to come out of COVID, but we do have a full generation of young people now that are okay with going to school online. So they're okay with it. Also, too, in college today, online and asynchronous, almost everyone is going to take 1, 2, 3, if not 4 classes online and asynchronous, even if they're in school full-time living there. So what we do is we schedule, their morning starts, a typical day, wake up, training, then it could be lift, it could be film, maths analysis, but we build academic time into their day. So it's very similar that they're like, okay, these times aren't specific, but say it's from 10 a.m. to 11:45, I've got academic time. That would be very similar to you being on campus somewhere and finishing training or finishing your lift, and then having to leave, move, take a shower, go to training, and then go back, get lunch, and continue on your day. So we're kind of training to that. Also, too, when we look at this, we offer them a pretty comprehensive suite of academic services, and our function is very much like what the athletic academics coordinator at their school will look like. If they're a business major, they're going to have their advisor within the business school. But then they're also going to have someone that sits in the athletic department that is helping them coordinate those activities as well. We're serving that role. So again, training them to be college soccer players. And there are a lot of things that we say to them, but especially when we talk to potential recruits, there are two areas where a college soccer coach does not want to have to worry about their student athletes. One is, what are they doing on Saturday nights? And two, what are their academics? And, quite frankly, and this has been the case forever, if your behavior on Saturday nights are taken away from your focus and the focus of the group and how to be the best footballing team that you can possibly be, that's a problem. Also, too, if your grades are rendering you ineligible, that's a problem. The wonderful thing about that is both of those situations are completely on the onus of the individual, and they have complete control over that. If you approach your academics in the right way, you're going to be fine. Mm-hmm. If you're making good decisions and stand out of trouble on Saturday night, you're going to be fine. So that when we talk to these kids and as we go through it, and I'd love to tell you that every single one of our kids is a 4.0 GPA at PCDA. They don't. We have some kids that really embrace it, and we have other kids that don't. And one of the things that is the potential downside of this is that PCDA, you're going to take classes that you're going to transfer to a four-year school. Well, you need to get B's and above, because unless you get really lucky, C's aren't going to transfer.
Yep.
So you're going to have to take B's and above. And we've partnered with really reputable academic institutions where our classes will go everywhere. But you have to get B's and above. So, the academic piece is key. And again, I hope every single player, when they graduate from high school and go on to play college soccer, I hope they all get to be pros. The statistics, like that NCAA ad that since March Madness, the statistics say the majority of them are going pro in something else.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, let's see if we can't use soccer to get you into maybe a better academic institution that you would get to if you just went on your own.
Yeah.
So,
I was there's a gentleman I follow on Twitter, and I can't remember his name offhand. We were talking about the statistics earlier in another show. He put together a spreadsheet, and basically it was MLS versus USL, and MLS was, what percentage of MLS rostered players played college soccer, period. And that number was 26%. USL was 54%. So, we talk about what is realistic, right? What is your pathway? Are you a 1%er? Well, it gets so small as far as like opportunity goes. What I really like about PCDA and what it represents is, I think back to my own experience in college and walking in day one. And even in the recruiting process where they're asking you, what do you want to be when you grow up? What kind of degree do you want? Are you kidding me? Like, I'm 17 years old. I just want to play soccer. And if you're going to pay for it, great. I have no idea what I want to do, right? So something like this is another, like, why force these kids to make decisions that they are nowhere near prepared to make at that age? That's just a PSA from me saying kudos. Because they should not be declaring a major at that point. So here's my question then, as it pertains to, you said something earlier. If a kid is coming from an MLS Next environment or ECNL National, you're kind of like a catch-all. You're like, yep, we're good for the most part. Can you expand on that a little bit though? Because I have to believe there is a certain Mendoza line, a cut, no cut. Is it based on numbers? So do you have one team? Do you have two teams? What's the head count? Where does the no come into play for someone that is potentially considering going to your program?
Yeah, really good question. I think for the first part, the no comes into play when they say, I just want to go D1 or pro. We wish you the best of luck, right? And we'd love to take those players, and those players likely are very, very good, and they would become a potential Harvey Sarajayan that left us this year and is at Wake Forest. One walk-on offer out of high school. A year later, he's at Wake Forest. Like, that's just a good example, right? But if Harvey would have said, Ryan, I just want to go pro, we wouldn't have taken Harvey. Because if we don't send him pro, we failed him. So when it comes to us identifying potential PCDA student athletes, it's a lot of it's their expectation. What do they want to get out of it? And then also from an MLS Next ECNL perspective, most of those, if not every single one of those ECNL directors / head coaches of ECNL national teams typically have a high licensure, A license, UEFA license, right? Those kids have already been through a rigorous tryout process. So we know they've already been identified as a top player within their community. So therefore, if it checks the boxes in terms of my platform to the next level, which is maybe pro, has to go through college, then you're a candidate for PCDA. But if you just want to go to that level, it's, we've got to wish you the very best of luck, because the chances are, statistics show.
Do you have roster limits or size limitations?
We do.
So what's the size of PCDA? Maybe break it down by location and head count.
Yeah, so we have one location right now open, which is in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and that's going into our 4th year of operation. We would like to say we max out at 36, 2 squads of 18. And I think bringing the purity into what we do, I will never fire a coach at PCDA for wins or losses. Doc can attest to that. When I send a message, if we live stream all games, if I miss a game, I'll ask the staff, what was the score? There is never a post-mortem on any result. And the reason for that is we want to develop our players' weaknesses. And it's quite refreshing.
Yeah.
If a centre-back is struggling with pace against a pacey forward, well, typically in his youth environment, he's going to be on the bench because that coach is designed to win games at the youth level. Why? Tryouts is next week. There's a ton of trophies in that cabinet. There's 3 MLS clubs in St. Louis. We need the best players. We need to be the best club alone in this town. So we need to show that we can win games. That's upside down. When was the last time you heard Manchester United won a U16 national championship in England?
When was the last time you heard Manchester United won anything in the current
That's
environment?
a bad example. Yeah, right.
It's funny you brought them up. They're in the under 16 GA Cup. Manchester United's under 16 groups coming.
Yeah,
to the
they
GA
are.
Cup. So we'll be able to answer that question after June or after April or whenever the GA Cup is.
Right. Exactly.
No, I like that. I tend to kind of swing back and forth in the debate between development versus competition. Because we've seen it firsthand where you get into some environments where it's all about player development, and you create these robots, right? And then they get into environments in which they have to win, like Flex in Baltimore. That's a great event because there's something on the line. But you see this kind of like whitewashed face, no facial expressions from these kids who are phenomenal players, and it's almost like the competition is being coached out of them through the development process. And then you get to college or clubs like you were talking about earlier. They got one job, especially at the Division I level, Division II included. You got to win games, right? So you're trying to find these top players that
it means something.
That in a lot of cases aren't in an environment that is hyper focusing on winning too. So PCDA, you just talk about how you don't do a postmortem. How do you balance those two things though? Because part of developing a kid that might not be physically ready or maybe not quite mentally ready for that college level, whatever it is, wherever they fall, those coaches are still overvaluing kids that know how to win. So how do you approach that?
Yeah, go ahead, Doc.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here a little bit because I think there's two things. We use the word development and we use the word competitive. I think you can absolutely talk about competitive, and I'm going to sort of tie it into academics and the athletic experience. Being competitive and learning how to compete doesn't necessarily mean winning. And there's so many lessons that come from that. And so when you get into this environment of like, hey, we're going to put you into as high a stress level as possible, and we want you to learn how to compete, because down the road, you're going to learn some lessons that, like you said, when you get into these environments where winning is absolutely paramount, that's going to be great. Also, too, when we think about academics, how many high school kids do you know? And I know a ton, and with 5 kids and myself, I've got some with a 3.8 GPA, and you look at them, you're like, you're not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but you have a 3.8 GPA. I would rather have a kid that goes and takes the most challenging classes possible in high school, takes the APs, not because he's going to get an A, but because he or she really wants to challenge themselves. And now they're getting a B in the AP class. To me, I think there's probably more education, actual learning going on in that environment than just taking your standard A and getting it done.
And more competition in that said class.
100%. You're learning, you're stacking yourself up. But, for the value of PCDA, and we talk about the American player. So I've got and this is a really personal. My son was MLS Academy kid, spent his senior year with the first team at DC United. Is he going to go to college? Is he going to go pro? Ended up going to college. Best decision ever. I thought he was probably too young and not ready, and so I was super excited that he went to college. And he is a blue chip prospect, and a lot of he enjoyed a lot of phone calls with a lot of people. He still went to his college team. He's a goalkeeper and redshirted his first year, and sat behind a senior who was a Big East goalkeeper of the year, got drafted by Inter Miami, and all the things. But if that's our case study, and again, it's the only one I know because it's my personal one, but I'm like, this is a kid who is really good, still went to a school and redshirted. The next year they won the Big East and he got the start, and he's a starter now, and that's all great. But if he's going to redshirt for a kid who's not yet quite developed and isn't yet at that level, there's no chance. And part of and I think that one of the things that you mentioned, Charlotte, the young man who's playing beside Zaha up front for Charlotte, he played Division III. So if you're good enough, they're going to find you. So I think that there's really the opportunity, to truly develop and kind of get to these places. So but for me, we're going to teach them how to compete, but we're also going to recognize that, hey, it's okay at times if you have to fail, because the failure is where the growth lines up. And we can, and again, Mike Sorber, and quite honestly, if Bora doesn't take over the national team and Bora doesn't really understand what Mike Sorber really is, Mike Sorber is probably not regarded as maybe the best six that we've ever produced in our country. Because Mike's not huge, Mike's not super fast, but Mike is super intelligent and wonderfully technical, and which is why he ended up one of the first Americans for when he went down to Pumas. But the reality is Bora went to watch Claudio Reyna at the College Cup, and he walked away and said, I understand Claudio Reyna is supposed to be the best, but who is that kid that played for St. Louis? That is literally the beautiful part of our country and the development process.
Game.
Yeah. But in our country, this is a massive country. And I mean, literally, when you just talk about the sheer numbers of it, I really think, and Harvey's a great example. Harvey had one high school offer, went to Georgia Southern, tore it up as a freshman, and no disrespect to anyone else that's been on the portal this year, he was the number one prospect on the portal. And literally 2 years before, nobody in college soccer knew who he was or had any interest. And that is not an indictment on college soccer. It's just a big country, and sometimes kids don't show. Maybe Harvey had stinkers when those coaches were watching, or maybe it is what it is. But because of that process, and we kind of went through this and learning how to do it, I have to think that his success at Georgia Southern and his ability to kind of navigate the freshman year, that's absolutely part of learning how to compete academically and athletically, in our process.
Wow. And that's exciting stuff. And as we're continuing to unravel the PCDA ball here per se, like, okay, so our kids and the calendar and in the school year, can you walk us through what a typical day when they show up in August for preseason is in your environment? Even if somebody's taken the 9 credit hours for that first semester per se, what does that day look like?
Yeah, so Doc has created a PCDA schedule that it's a sample template that we provide all athletes. A week in the life would probably be easier for me to explain. We train 12 to 16 hours a week on the pitch, every morning, Monday through Friday, 8 till 10, 8:30 to 10:30. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we have double sessions from 2 to 4. Sprinkled in there, we have sports performance, 2 days a week, lower body, upper body. Depending on how our game load is, we may do just one full body workout instead of 2 separate ones. And then sprinkled in there, we have asynchronous academic schedules for about an hour and 15, an hour and a half. They don't have to take advantage of that, but this helps them manage their time a little bit better. If a kid wants to wake up at 6 o'clock, knock out an hour and a half of homework before an 8 o'clock training session, he's got all evenings free. Little bit refreshing from a work-life balance with our staff. We're pretty much done with the academy at 4 o'clock every day. And that's by design. I want my staff at home with their families, so they're not spending more time with other people's kids than their own kids. And that's what they experience in the youth game. And they come back to training the following morning, rejuvenated and refreshed and excited to tackle the day with our guys. But also our guys can maybe have evenings off to rest, to play Xbox. We've invested heavily in partnerships to provide work opportunities for our guys. So in Murfreesboro, we've introduced total over the course since last August, I think we've had a little over 36 to maybe 40 players come through the Murfreesboro location. Returners that have came for a third semester have moved on to their school. Some kids drop out, and that's okay too. But we've introduced over 30 referees to a market that is screaming for referees. And I think our guys really don't care if they get screamed at on the sidelines. I'm going to $95 for this game. Shout at me all you want. As long as they're doing a good job, they're getting paid. They could make as much as $600 a week upwards if they accept all of their assignments. And we've mapped it out. Nobody's done this. We've mapped it out between midweek games and weekend games. If all of the stars line up in the sky, they could make upwards of $1,200 a week refereeing.
So let me talk a little bit about the players themselves, and just kind of get your guys' take on preparedness. Because what we're seeing, we're putting all this through the lens of how difficult it is for a true high school senior to leave high school and then go to a college program at any level and make an impact, or to let alone just make the team or get minutes, right? What are you seeing as far as where the most development, or maybe where the maturity is occurring within your program, that you can say, you know what, we're really good, or what we're seeing is these kids are just getting bigger, or they're getting stronger, or they're getting faster, or maybe it's maturity based on the environment. What are some of the characteristics or the things that you're seeing that are the measurable benefits preparing these kids to go to the next level?
Yeah.
Wait, the cool thing about our process is that when you think about it, if say kid graduates in May, goes to college soccer, they are usually gangbusters through September. They're excited. It's awesome. They're super. And then long about October, this nasty little thing called midterms start to pop up, and pressure starts, and then the footballing conference play starts, and the footballing gets harder. And then they kind of realize, my mom and dad aren't here, and my friends and support network from whatever town I went to. So freshmen usually start off in a high, and then round about October, they trail off. And you look at it at any Division I school, there will be freshmen that tear it up. And then somewhere around the middle of the season, they're just not quite as good. And how can they expect to be? Because it all happened at once. They moved away from home. Soccer got way more intense. Academics got way more intense. Oh, and by the way, then we added the whole nother just batch of temptation in that nobody's telling them what time they have to go to bed. No one's telling them where they have to do. And so it's just all of it happens at once. So with our process, what we found is we go through some similar things. The best part about that is that we do not have the added pressure of, hey, you've got to win, and hey, this is cutthroat. Because at any location, if we have, say we do have 36 kids, and again, there's going to be injuries and stuff that comes through that. There are so many game opportunities and so many training things that it's not just 36 players on a roster for one game a week for only 20 games. Every player is going to leave PCDA with, in addition to all the college work and all the lifts and all the running, they're going to leave with 30 to 35 games. But to your process about when does the light bulb come on, that is really the age-old question. And I don't know that I have an answer. Some people, the light bulb comes on week 1. And then some, I'll be honest with you, we're at March, and we've had a couple where the light bulb has just come on, and that's okay. The wonderful thing about that is that's the entirety of the premise of the process, is that this is a development. And if I was going to say, hey, you should have this figured out by now, there's no way to do that. We have to provide an environment. If in fact it's truly development, we have to provide a holistic environment that they are going to say, if you get into this process at the end, so in a year's time, will you be better prepared to play college soccer? Yes, you will. Will I be in a better spot in terms of where I could potentially go in the hierarchy of college soccer? That'll be completely up to you. And I use this all the time. And I love the fact that Ryan, being from England, has adopted it. But it's horses and water. We are literally going to take them to the perfect pond. The water is clean. It's no predators.
You can't make them drink it.
You cannot.
Yeah,
And like I tell every kid, I'm like, listen, my GPA at the Air Force Academy was shockingly bad, but I graduated. My master's was much better. My doctorate I got a 4.0. I've already been to college. I'm not going again. I'm not going to help your son write his paper. I'm not going to check his math homework. I am, however, going to give him every opportunity and point him in the right direction. But if you don't want to turn in a rough draft to the writing center at your institution to check over your essay that's due, and then you turn it in and you didn't use Grammarly and you didn't just use basic grammar because you weren't paying attention, that I told you to do that, but you won't do it. It's no dissimilar than football. If we're playing a back three and say, listen, we have to protect the wide spots. Well, I don't really want to track back. Cool. You're probably not going to be in the team sheet, right? It's just not going to happen.
Can you lead our listeners, and I think our listeners, and we'll JB will put it in the episode notes on where to find you guys, and just by a quick getting on your website, there are some of these. But I think, like anything, any success is about building relationships, and you guys have both been in the game for a long time, and so you guys have many of these relationships that we haven't even touched on. Can you either include names, or if you don't feel comfortable, I understand, can you give some recent success stories of kids that have came to you out of X place, and they are currently excelling in these institutions that we're leading on to?
Yeah, I mean, I've obviously been here longer than you, Doc, right? But I'm going to give you a few examples of guys that are not playing college, right? So one example is I got a phone call from a mom from Georgia. He committed to a decent D2 program in Georgia. His mom called me and said, Ryan, thank you very much for what you did for my son. Not only is it a great soccer program, but it's a 10-month crash course on teaching my son how to grow up and become a man, which is a pretty cool phone call to have, right? From the excelling on the soccer pitch, we've just placed a guy at Rhode Island, no offers at high school, came to us for one semester. Went to Rhode Island's camp, they loved him, he left early. Wake Forest, Creighton, Cal State Fullerton, Fairfield, Lipscomb. Kid at Lipscomb went to their ID camp twice, they said no. Then they saw him playing for PCDA. By the way, Doc, last year we played 65 games with a squad of 36 players. The year before we played 74. This year, the group of 30-plus players will be on track to play around 60 games. But nobody plays in 60 games, right? But this kid, Robert Rodriguez, was playing with us. Lipscomb were watching him and said, is that Robert? We're like, yes. Wow, we want him. So he was told no twice by Lipscomb. They saw him playing. They recruited him. D2, CSU Pueblo, starting goalkeeper, played in the national championship game last year, came to us with a number 5 offer. Number 5 offered to go to college. He said no, came to PCDA, went in as the number 3, was such an incredible student athlete, incredible human being. Oliver Twelvetrees, the head coach, said, I'm going to give you a chance because my starting goalkeeper is injured. He went through all the way to the national championship game. This is a kid that was told no multiple times, and then he had a decent run this year. One of my most successful stories, guys, is a kid called Tucker Chapman. Tucker was from Vermont, 6'4", number 6. Great player. We've had a few of these success stories, but Tucker's the one that stands out. Vermont looked at him, believe it or not. Some really good Division 1s out in California, Division 2s. We had our IDP, and he said, Ryan, what PCDA has taught me is I don't love football enough to be owned by that college soccer coach because it's transactional, right? Mm-hmm. I'm giving you something for you giving me something in return. He said, Ryan, I just want to play fall soccer. I want to have the spring to go cross-country skiing, fishing, camping. I said, Tucker, D3, mate, D3. He's like, yep. So then we got him some offers up in the Northeast. He ended up not going D3 because he got a full presidential scholarship to the University of Vermont and just went and became a student.
So let me ask a little bit about the X's and O's on how you manage, excuse me. you've said if a kid comes to you and says, I want to be pro or D1, it's not a good fit because it's just, the expectation part of that. However, on the back end, you're, to a degree, all institutions like yours, even though you're the only one that we know of that is doing it this way, you're really kind of measured on the pass through, right? Where are these kids landing? Because that's where the parent that's cutting the check, that's what they're looking at. So can you talk a little bit about your own process as it pertains to the talent on hand with your Rolodex? What is your role on a day in, day out basis on trying to connect those dots in real time?
Yeah, so we're still actively growing our resources that we have. Dr. Mennel was the last edition with academics. I'm in meetings daily with companies that want to work with us on the placement of our athletes, but we don't want to work with recruiting agencies. That's our job. We don't exist if we don't place players, right?
Right.
So the athletes drive the recruiting bus. And I made this mistake in the early days of PCDA, getting really excited with talented players. And I would blindly send my contacts in college soccer a profile of a player in PCDA. All 10 of them responded, Ryan, we really like him. But then I've got to tell 9 of my friends that I just blindly sent a profile and he's chosen somebody else. So the next time I send those players a profile, those college coaches will say, Ryan, no, we're not interested. So it's a balance. So these kids have to drive the recruitment bus themselves. They have to find that, the taboo word, the right fit that's often used, right? Academics, social, football, public, private, classroom size, academic fit, budget, right? So they drive that bus. They work with us on 3 types of schools: dream school, reach school. A lot of those are dream and reach schools. Let's dream. We don't want to kill dreams. Realistic, and then backup schools. And those lists are fluid because we play about 40 games a year against colleges. And those colleges that we play against might not be on a kid's list. We went to Gardner Webb a couple of weeks ago, played their development squad, beat them 2-1. The coach, the Gardner Webb, like a couple of our players. There was a couple of other coaches from the area that were looking at some of our players too. And all of a sudden now we add those schools onto some of those kids' IDP. So there's a fluid list, moving list, but we don't blindly send profiles to every single college coach in the country. It's just ethically, it's not right. And it's a reputation killer.
That makes sense. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, and what other about that is we talked about, you asked a question about how these kids get selected. Something about their game, something about their profile has to scream college soccer. And that's great. And but St. Louis is a great example, and St. Louis, long and storied history. Not everyone is going to be able to play at SLU. Kevin's only got 28 roster spots. Kale over at SIUE has only got 28 roster spots. Damon Rensing, St. Louis legend, up in Michigan State, only has 28 roster spots. So the reality is to say, hey, listen, what's the right fit for you? And it's just like when I was in California, every single kid that played club for us, whether it be at, Southway Soccer Club or the LA Galaxy Academy, hey, I want to play at UCLA. Awesome. That's a great goal. There's only so many roster spots and not everyone's going to get there. When you argue the best soccer players that have played for our national team, like the debate will probably come down currently, and I think Christian Pulisic will be at the top. But right now it's a debate between Dempsey and Donovan. Donovan didn't go to college. He went to Germany. And Clint Dempsey went to Furman University. And I'll be honest with you, how many people know where Furman is? It's in Greenville, South Carolina. If you visit there, there's not a kid in the country that wouldn't want to go to school there. It's a beautiful school, great school, in South Carolina, all the things that come with that. So I think everybody's fit and pathway is going to be different. But, when we look at a kid's academics and they do an intake form, as soon as they get to a place where, hey, we're going to seriously talk about maybe you joining PCDA, we look at their academics. And there could be very frank discussions. If they've got really bad academics and we say, listen, you can do PCDA, but this might be a 2-year process because you may have to get yourself an AA to be eligible. And then there's other kids that are going to come in. And we have had kids that have had so many AP classes and have done so much dual enrollment. They come to us and Ryan and I discuss them like, hey, you know what? This kid's grades are so good. I don't think he really needs to do college classes. He's sitting on 18 AP units. He's already there. So let's let him just focus on the football part. And it sounds like we don't necessarily have a concrete example, but the concrete example is this is a development environment, and so it has to be bespoke in a lot of ways for each of these individuals. And being nimble enough to kind of do that is great. And we've, our academic process, we've scaffolded. So I think that we're ready for 1,000 players, but right now, doing it, and we've created it in that way. So our monitoring process, and we can look after them, in a very individual way. So they feel like, hey, I personally meet with every kid every 2 weeks. And sometimes it's on WhatsApp. Sometimes it's a phone call. Sometimes it's a Zoom call, just like this, but to go through the conversation, like, hey, how you doing? And the great part for me is doing the academics, as a former college coach, kids all the time will ask me, and they'll say, hey, what do you think about this program? And I've seen the film, like, hey, I think that's a great idea. And then I can communicate that to the technical staff, like, hey, this kid's thinking about, he wants to go this. Is that on the right part and the right pathway? And then we can start to have a conversation like, I hear you want to play at UCLA. Maybe you should be looking at Drake. And that's one of those things.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, just really quickly, just touching on that, right? So a player last year, he was a center back from Colorado. His name is Arlo Filet. Arlo played with girls in the spring, believe it or not. He's 6'4" and he's a center back. He didn't have a program to play in the spring, so he just played with the girls program. He came to PCDA. He had a torn labrum in his shoulder, so we rehabbed that for 4 months before he could have contact. He had an offer at UC Davis from a tournament we played in. It was too expensive to go to California. So I sent his profile to Paul Marco at Binghamton University, right? Paul fires a text message back saying, Ryan, he looks a little bit slow. I'm like, well, yeah, there's not much you can see on video. But what we have at PCDA, we come at our guys from all different angles, metrics, biometrics, heart rate zones to monitor fitness, the wearable technology. So I sent Arlo a text message. I said, Arlo, send me a screenshot of your personal best on Stat Sports, average distance, max speed. He sent me that. I took a screenshot of that. I sent it to Paul Marco, 21.9 miles per hour, just shy of 22 miles per hour. He's like, wow, his video looks deceivingly slow, but quite the contrary, he's really fast. I want to talk to him. How many kids have that luxury at 18 years old that can get their profile on top of a college coach's inbox where they receive thousands of emails a week or a month, right? And it's just coming at that coach and say, well, hey, coach, how fast is your number 9? Harvey Sarajayan was 1 mile an hour slower than Mbappe with the ball. Think about that.
Yeah, that's great. The technology on the side of the game, and the clubs are starting to utilize that and getting that out in front of coaches, because that's really good metrics. And I know we're getting long in the tooth, and I think we're wrapping up here. But my first serious question is you guys are based in Murfreesboro. The MLS playoffs moving to Murfreesboro, and I think that stadium where they play the Final Four at, and that park is kind of where that place is housed, or that tournament's housed. You guys are also there. Has that helped you guys? Hurt you guys as a business model to have that tournament local right next to you guys?
No, I think it actually helps us, right? Because again, there's a lot of MLS kids that are uncommitted, that are just not getting the looks. And I think if they see the facility, the $5 million indoor facility that we have access to almost every day, we want it, because we're training on a morning and an early afternoon before kids get out of school, right? And then the apartments where the guys live are just 2 miles as the crow flies. I don't think it's hurting us at all. I think it's just giving us some more exposure. I wish the park would be open to us having some signage out there, but that's not a reality right now for us to do that. But I think when we're out there scouting, like your average college coaches, the conversations are really good for us to have with them.
Yeah, so I love all this, because I think it's filling a need is what it's really doing. I mean, at the end of the day, for those of us that are knee deep in this shit, 7 days a week with our kids, the chaos is the problem, and this is kind of a solution, or at least a remedy to the lack of love in a lot of cases. So number one, kudos for the concept and bringing it into motion. I'm going to close out question. Let's look into the future a little bit. Like, what is the strategy? What is the 12-month, maybe the 3-year, the 5-year? Doctor, you said a second ago, we're prepared to take 1,000 students. Well, you're at 36 now. That's massive growth. So what are we really looking at over the next 1, 3, 5 years from PCDA as far as other markets, as far as, how to scale? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think strategic partnerships, we are close to having a St. Louis PCDA, which will be incredible if we get that off the ground. We're looking at Kansas City, we're looking at Omaha, we're looking at Chicago, Northern California, Florida, Georgia. We've got a lot of interest to bring PCDA to those locations. And I think with the birth year changes next year, where it's now going back to grade year versus birth year, there's going to be a lot of kids that are no longer age eligible to stay in their gap year at their club. And what I say to this, there's some good clubs, there's some mediocre clubs, and there's some ugly clubs out there. What I say to kids that are uncommitted is, and they say, Ryan, I'm going to stay with my club one more year. You mean you're going to stay with that club one more year that's failed to get you committed on a program that maybe you have half that roster that are motivated to go to the next level and half are not? Whereas if you come to PCDA, every single one of these guys at PCDA are motivated to get to that next level. So it's the environment that you're going to put yourself in. The growth is there in terms of facilities, locations. We just need facilities. Well, that's easy because we're using them 8:00 in the morning. Nobody else is using them. So there's a revenue stream for clubs to charge us rent to use these facilities. There's a real estate play. We house the boys in apartments. We're looking at acquiring real estate. And then fixture list, exposure. It doesn't matter. I think the PCDA brand right now, we could have an academy in Fiji and still give the same guys the exposure in the US, simply with the players that we've placed at some of these schools.
So St. Louis makes sense. Chicago makes sense. But, I got to toss a little shade here. How did Kansas City make this?
Yeah. There's a big facility that's just been built now, right? Right. So
you hate barbecue. That's not any good. Yeah. So hey, you were in St. Louis for a short time. Our listeners may or may not know you played at Harris Stowe, and it's been a while. As you know, in the early 2000s. What was your favorite thing about St. Louis? Whether it was dining, whether it was the Cardinals, what did you like the most about your stay in St. Louis?
It was super cool. So we lived in Plaza Square, right? We were the poorest of the poor, right? It was awful because we're 40 yards from St. Louis Stadium, right? We're playing on a baseball diamond. I think when I got there, Harris Stowe were 48-0 over the last few years at home. Why? There's no grass on the field, right? Yeah. We're changing in a gymnasium. SLU have the locker rooms, right? So we were the poor.
You should see their locker room now.
I know. No, yeah, trust me.
And did you tell Donegan he should have got you and not Dipsy? All right, probably worked out pretty good.
Yeah, there's just a slight difference with me and Dipsy, right? Well, I think when we're living in Plaza Square, my apartment was on the first floor. We could hear the Blues when they scored. We could hear the siren go off. And then when the Blues were, I think they won a playoff game maybe, and the whole crowd just walking past our apartment. But I'm a social butterfly. I worked at Have a Nice Day Cafe for a few years.
Yeah.
Right?
It's right across from Rono Stadium.
Exactly, right? So I'm a bartender there, and it was just St. Louis. The landing was unbelievable, right? Apart from getting robbed at gunpoint in my parking lot one night, which is a true story, that was probably the scariest part of my life.
Sounds on point.
Yeah, exactly.
Emo's Pizza and getting stuck up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my friend, I'm going to pass this podcast on to my friend Gordon, give him a shout out in Scotland. He was with me.
Nice.
It was scary.
And then Dr. Manel, you were name dropping some St. Louis names there earlier. What's your, you know an awful lot about some of our brethren. What's your kind of connection to the Lou?
I've been to St. Louis a lot. And so I actually, when I was at the academy, you do a summer program called Ops Air Force Base. So I was at Scott Air Force Base for 4 weeks. And, obviously Mississippi Nights closed like probably 2007, right? So, but I saw, this is in 1994, which is kind of a big summer sports-wise in this country. I saw Beck at 1994 at Mississippi Nights. And then spent a New Year's. I spent when 95 became 96. I spent New Year's in St. Louis, taking college teams there to play against SLU when Bob Warming and Johnny Torres and Jason Mims were on his staff.
Oh yeah, Mimsy.
Made the mistake of going out with Johnny Torres and Jason Mims, and I'll never make that mistake again. Like that's tough. But no, St. Louis is a really cool town, and it is. I remember being a kid, and I'm really dating myself when, the national team would play their games at the soccer park. And, it would, the one game that would be on a year would be on ESPN. And I still remember David Vannoli saving a penalty to keep the dream alive at the soccer park. And it was, that's pretty funny that as a kid, I'm watching David Vannoli and Paul Crumpy, and literally 7 years later started a 15-year career working for Paul Crumpy. So that's pretty awesome.
You brought up the soccer park and the U.S. national team. On this show, sitting at this table, Tab Ramos called the St. Louis soccer park their Azteca.
I don't disagree with that. I really think that is, and I think that there are certain fixtures that should be played certain places. I'll be honest with you. From now until the end of time, we should play Mexico and Columbus, Ohio. We absolutely should, and it's awesome. And I would love to see. I'd love to see St. Louis kind of get there, but I mean they've done, John Hackworth and those guys have done such a great job, and it's going to be awesome. And I think that it's about time that St. Louis has an MLS team, and that's really cool. But St. Louis is a great town. It's family friendly, but also too, it's a fun place to go as an adult. I've always enjoyed my time there.
I think
I will drop that one.
What's that?
I said I will drop it's the soccer home, right? It's a home of soccer based on the 1950s World Cup, right? Which
Walter Barr, man, Walter Barr.
You're talking to the guy that scored the goal against Gerard Butler in that movie.
Hey, does the PCDA
nice.
does the PCDA have a lawyer group? Because if Kansas City heard that and they heard that you guys said it's the home of soccer,
you're gonna get
a letter.
Yeah, I know. Bring the letter on, right? Yeah. No, the movie The Miracle Match filmed in there, right? So I was on set with those guys for a few weeks.
So then did you meet Matt and Jason Dr, two twins from St. Louis that were also extras playing in the movie?
I probably did, right? I mean, but it was like Gavin Rosdale, Gerard Butler, obviously John Harkes. I saw John at the convention, reminiscing with him. I mean, that guy with those big brown leather boots that we had to wear and that big hard brown leather ball, right? Harksey, the way that he pinged that ball was just like it was unbelievable the way he could strike that ball.
That's awesome, man. It's such a small world because I guarantee, in fact, I know for a fact, I still have the ticket stub from that Mississippi Nights show with Beck. So I was definitely there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was 94. That was my sophomore year. Sophomore year of college. So, yeah, small world. Well, gentlemen, congratulations on PCDA. Obviously sounds as if things are thriving, you're growing, you're looking at other markets. If you land here, when you come up to scout, come knock on our door. We'll all hook up, grab some pints. It won't go to Mississippi Nights, obviously, doesn't exist, but there are plenty of plan Bs.
There are.
But thank you for coming on the show. We really appreciate your time. We'll be sure to include all the links to PCDA in the show notes. So if you're listening, just go click down below, give them a follow, give them a shout. But we appreciate your time, guys.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.